sure we get everything. So REAL for me is an acronym for radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. And what we're going to do is break it down into, it's a 6-week course. But radical does not mean crazy, wild, out there radical. It means getting back to basics.
Okay, I'm writing this down. Radical. I read it on your thing.
Yeah, well,
I listened to part of one of the lady who's the leadership lady. Radical, energized,
authentic, and learning focused, which to me is open, just being open. And the radical one, I think people have already, they come in with their already preconceived notion of what that means. And politically right now, it's gotten such a bad rap because it's like, they've gotten radicalized. No, that's not what it means. So
I like when people say I'm radical, but
I know. Well, you are radical. I mean, that's why I have your long bio, but I want you to talk about your long bio. I'll just use your short bio because I know who you are. People are going to know who you are. I'm going to tell about you, but I love your story. And I remember when I first met you and you were talking about your story a little bit, like how you got there, but it started at a certain point. And I want to know before that. I want to know.
Yeah, well, I'll bring you up to that point.
Okay.
That's good.
Because I think once we make it in the world, like we're successful by the world standards, then people are like, oh, look at how easy it is for her, right? Don't choke. And they forget about whatever it was that brought people to the point, I mean, to that point before. And I think for you, someone like you, I'm going to make a huge assumption. Anybody who's in the transformational world, there's something that had to have brought you to that place. And that's what I'd like to talk about.
Yeah, well, we'll I know whatever we talk about, it's going to turn out fantastic because we're just going to do it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just kind of do the whole thing and then I will edit it later and we'll figure out that stuff.
Yeah, but I look so dark. I'm going to turn on the light. Hold on. And do little underlighting. That's better.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I do like that better. Yep. Okay, ready?
Always.
And I just want to pronounce your name correctly. It's Poneman, right?
It's actually Pa, like Papa.
That's what I want to make sure. Poneman.
No, right. Everybody pronounces it wrong.
I know, and I knew I was going to. That's why I'm glad I asked. Okay.
Thank you for asking.
All right. Yes. Hey, everybody, it's Jody, and welcome to episode 40 of Circle Up and Get Real. Can you believe we have 40 episodes? This is so fun. I am honored today to be having a conversation with Debra Poneman, who I met in 2019 at the Steve Farber Extreme Leadership Experience in San Diego. And when I met her, I'm going to talk to you like I'm talking about you. Debra, when I met you, it was just like, you are me. We're, it's so fun to get into a space of people who really feel like we've known each other for a long time. And
it did happen.
It did. Yeah. And so Debra is kind of a big deal, you guys. I just need to say that because she has been known as the mentor to the mentors. And so she's done a lot of amazing work since 1980 when she left corporate America and became a guru. You are a guru. I'm just going to say that. You can negate that if you want to, but for 4 decades, Debra has been sharing her system, the Yes to Success system, now used by tens of thousands of people around the world to live lives of not only success and abundance, but true happiness and deep inner fulfillment. And what more could we want right now? Oh, Debra, it is, I'm just going to timestamp this because I always do this. It is now October 26th, 2020. This is 1 week and 1 day before our election. So by the time you listen to this podcast, 10 years from now, because it will still be relevant, just go back in your mind to where we might have been right now in this energetic space. We have so much we can talk about, Debra.
Okay, well, I got to tell you a funny story starting right out, okay?
Yeah, please.
So when you said that I was like a guru and I laughed so hard. So this is a great story. So my friend Melanie, who lives in Fairfield, Iowa, remember I met.
I will talk about that.
Yeah, so I lived in Fairfield, Iowa for many years, taught meditation for decades. Actually, in 4 days will be my 50th anniversary of learning to meditate.
Wow.
50th. I just popped out of the womb and
And
started
you're only like
meditating.
52. I know, I was going to say, how does that work?
Amazing. But anyway, so I lived in Fairfield forever, and one of my closest friends there, her name is Melanie. So she has a godson who lives in San Francisco. And I was living north of San Francisco in Marin County at the time. And she came to visit and she stayed with me. She went down and visited her godson, and she came back and she told me the story, and she's telling it like she nearly falls off the couch. She says, "You're not going to believe this. I was at Matthew's, and Matthew's sister was there, and Matthew's sister's new girlfriend was there, and we just started talking, and I said I was staying with my friend Debra up in Marin County, and Matthew's sister's girlfriend says, oh, Debra who?" And she said, "Oh, you wouldn't know her. She just was new to Marin County." She said, "Well, I know a lot of people there." She said, "Well, her name is Debra Poneman." And the girl goes, "Oh, you mean the spiritual teacher, Debra Poneman?" And Melanie said she laughed so hard she had to go to the bathroom.
That's so awesome. Oh, but you are. I mean, you are. So to step into that, I mean, you are. And you are someone who people like me look up to and hope someday to be in the presence of. And I know when I met you, I wouldn't have known you because you're kind of a behind the scenes person. You do your thing to help other people, get their message out.
Yeah, I did that for many years. Well, you know my whole story that.
Well, they don't. Our listeners don't, though.
Well, I'll give you a Cliff's Notes version of
Okay.
my story. And I know you want to talk about what happened
Yeah.
before I started teaching, but I did become a teacher of Transcendental Meditation. I went to TM teacher training in 1971. So you could start calculating how old I am. And then I worked full time for the TM movement for the decade of the 70s. And when I was about to hit the big 3-0, I thought, woman does not live by mantra alone.
Mm-hmm.
I got to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
So I left the meditation community that I was living in, and I moved to LA because that's where I thought people made money. They definitely didn't make it in Fairfield, Iowa. So I moved to LA and I started selling investments. Long story short, I was not very good at it. As a matter of fact, I never sold one investment. But one night I went to a money seminar that a friend invited me. I thought I was going to be on stocks and bonds, so maybe I would be more effective at what I was doing. But it was at the Learning Annex, and the guy was talking about the law of attraction. This was in 1980.
Wow.
And he was saying that no matter what appears on the outside, it's your thoughts that create your reality. So if you are always thinking thoughts of, "I'm so poor, I'll never get out of debt, the economy is awful, what am I going to do?" And instead of visualizing what you want, no matter what your financial situation is, he says, we're like tuning forks and we vibrate. If you're vibrating B flat, you're not going to bring in a C sharp. So what you have to do is you have to paint a picture. He said, even go into Beverly Hills and walk down the streets and look at the mansions and say, "That's for me." When you see somebody driving down the street in a Mercedes or a Rolls Royce, whatever. And at the time, not only was I broke, I was less than broke. I was driving a beat up Chevy Bel Air that my aunt had left me when she passed away, that was 10 years old. But I went to the Mercedes dealership and I got a picture of a Mercedes and I put it up on my bulletin board and I visualized myself with everything that I wanted. And at the end of this presentation that I went to, this money seminar, I was just vibrating. Every cell in my body was vibrating with the truth of what this guy was saying about how our thoughts can create our reality. And I thought, and my thoughts are really powerful because I'd been meditating for so many years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was like but I didn't know this thing about don't talk about all the time what you don't want, but talk about what you do want. And you mentioned the election. It's like we sit around talking about how horrible it is and how about horrible the candidate is that we don't like, and all of the horrible things, but we're just bringing that energy right onto the planet, we're helping that person when we're talking that way. And we're certainly not helping ourselves when we're bringing negativity into our life. So long story short, I went home and I had the idea of what I wanted to do the rest of my life, which was to teach these principles of how to use your mind to create your reality. So I started studying the great masters like Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and Emmett Fox and Florence Shinn. And I put together a seminar, and I called it, it was actually called Successful Woman Unlimited originally. I don't know if you know that, but it was very successful. But when I looked out in the audience, it was about half men. And I thought, maybe I should like remove that barrier to entry, And I changed my the name of my company to Yes to Success. And it became hugely successful. Within a few short years, it was being taught all around the world in major cities, and some people who are now renowned transformational leaders and New York Times bestselling authors were my students at the time. And I forgot the point that I was going to make. What was the whole point of the story?
I think we were just talking about how you were a guru, and I think that's how we got here.
Reluctant guru.
Yeah. But I want to know, and you said, I know we're going to talk about going back before all this, but your story, you said, I know your story. And yes, I do know that story. This was early though. I heard about the law of attraction for the first time in 2006.
Yes, this was 1980.
Yeah, 1980. And you just decided, okay, first I want to go back because now I do want to go back. Fairfield, Iowa. How did you get to Fairfield? Were you born there? Are you from there?
No, I'm from Chicago. I was born in Chicago, raised in Chicago. Fairfield, Iowa is it's a meditation community. It's where the Transcendental Meditation technique, it's a university fully accredited from actually pre-kindergarten through the PhD level. It's a vibrant community, all people who practice the Transcendental Meditation technique. And I was actually went there right at the beginning. I was the director of admissions right when the university started. I actually, much to my parents' dismay, I transferred from Washington University in St. Louis just before I was about to get my degree, and transferred to MIU and got my degree from MIU, which Maharishi International University, which I'm very proud of. But yeah, and then it's a beautiful community. It's rural, obviously, in the middle of Iowa, but it's a rich community because people come from all over the world to be in the meditation community, thousands of people. So that's why I was in Fairfield, Iowa. Actually, Farber, that's how I know Steve Farber.
I know it is. And I want to go back though before that. So you're in Chicago and you go to college like everybody does, Washington University in St. Louis. You're probably getting a degree in what?
English literature.
English literature. And your parents are probably going, what the heck is she going to do with a degree in English literature if she's not going to teach?
Well, the story is so much more complex than that, but maybe we'll get into it. But you keep going. So I'm not
I just find it fascinating that somebody who's 20 years old at this point, is there something that's saying to you, I want to go be with this Maharishi School of international school that's getting started? Where does that come from?
Well, where it came from, remember, this was 1970s. So I'm a child of the 60s. I mean, I was at March on Washington in 1969. This movie that's very popular right now about the Chicago 7, I have a picture of myself on the front page of the Chicago Tribune with the National Guard with the rifle in my face because we were there at the courthouse protesting to free the Chicago 7. So that's where I came from. I was at the Chicago convention, and and that was my life. My parents are very liberal, and you might say I was a radical. And at the time, learning meditation was like the hip and cool thing to do when you're a child of the
Beatles. Didn't the Beatles study with Maharishi?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I went to teacher training when I was 19, and the Beach Boys were on my teacher training. I was even in my it's called small groups. You're in your small group and you learn the steps of teaching people meditation. And Mike Love and Al Jardine were in my small group.
Wow.
So that was that. So so I started meditating in 1970, obviously 50 years ago. And And that was it. It was just, I was a child of the times, that was what you did. You protested the war in Vietnam. You went to the Democratic Convention if you lived in Chicago to protest the war in Vietnam, and you learned meditation. But a lot of people then went on to other communities like AST, or, I mean, there are so many communities that were starting up at that time. There is a community with Paramahansa Yogananda, and I went the direction of becoming a transcendental meditation teacher. And I taught thousands of people. Well, actually, over 1,000 people. I stopped counting because that was the wave. That was the time where everybody was learning TM. It was so huge, in the 70s. So I was very, very fortunate to be part of that wave. And then when I went down to Washington University in St. Louis, my friend was just reminding me that I was the president of the meditation club at WashU. And she said I used to bribe people to come and fill out postcards, because that was how we communicated back then, by giving them Chips Ahoy cookies.
Get some Chips Ahoy and you'll get your life in meditation.
Right.
What a great...
Fill out these postcards and you can be part of our meditation community.
Well, I just need to interject here that I did go to Fairfield University to hear David Lynch in, I don't even remember what year, a few years ago. And some friends of mine and I saw David Lynch, and we stayed in that bed and breakfast place outside of Fairfield a little bit with Donovan.
Oh, Raj, you stayed at the Raj. Yeah. Probably.
And
it's an Ayurvedic center. Beautiful. Yes. Ayurvedic.
We hung out with Donovan.
I mean,
so bizarre, in Fairfield, Iowa. Who would have known?
That's because he was in the old days with the Beatles and the Beach Boys and Donovan and Mia Farrow and that whole crowd. He was one of them. So he would frequent Fairfield. He would come there a lot and do concerts. And I was also the director of campus activities. So I also knew him.
Well, I did this maybe 8 years ago. I mean, this wasn't long
this is 1975, 76.
So you met Farber there, because Farber also went to school there. And
yeah, that's another story and a half. My husband owned a commodities futures trading company. He moved it from Manhattan to Fairfield, Iowa to be in the meditation community. And Farber was one of his brokers. So
I remember that story. Farber talked about being a broker, and it just wasn't the industry for him.
No, but you remember my story that was when I had also started teaching Yes to Success. And I went and I taught a Yes to Success seminar for my husband's employees and his brokers. And I remember Farber this story, Farber stood up, and while he was sharing some idea, because people share all the time during Yes to Success, and I stopped him, I said, "You need to be a professional speaker." And he said, "Oh, no, not me." I said, no, you need to be a professional speaker. You are funny, you have presence, you have that it factor, you are quick. I could just see you being hugely successful on the speaking circuit. And he's like, "Oh, no." And then, make a long story short, just last year, he was named as one of the Huffington Post's top 10 transformational speakers in the country.
See? It's a small world when we get to this space, isn't it?
It totally is.
So you did a lot at first, and then you got into companies like McDonnell Douglas, Mattel, Xerox. How did that come about?
Well, basically, I just started teaching these universal principles of success, and I had so many people come to my seminar. See, I was pretty much the only show in town at that time, teaching the law of attraction, but in a way that it was palatable to McDonnell Douglas and Xerox and Mattel. I put it in a structure so that I also taught time management. I mean, I still do, because success can't flow through disorder. If you're not orderly with your time, and if you're not orderly with your space, you could learn all the law of attraction you want, and you're not going to be successful. So what I would do is I would teach these energetic principles of success and spiritual principles of success, but also very practical principles of success. So it was kind of like, subterfuge. I mean, I would go into these companies and I would teach time management and a very specific system of goal setting. And then I would sneak in the things like law of attraction and how our minds create our realities. And how it happened is because people would come to my public seminars and they would say, you have to come. And that's how I got all my speaking engagements, and for business and professional women and women in management and women in banking and all of that. And that was really how my company grew. We didn't have the internet back then. I mean, my Yes to Success seminars are being taught in 7 countries on 4 continents within a few years. And this was snail mail and phones with curly cords. We didn't have
what? Phones with what?
They were attached to the wall, right? And but because the knowledge was so powerful and so effective, and it was working in people's lives, so they shared it with people who shared it with people who shared it with people, and next thing we knew, it was around the world in the early 80s.
Was there a time, because I'm after this, I'm in the next wave of things. When I was in business in the late 80s, 90s, none of this, well, maybe it's because I lived in North Dakota, I don't know, we never heard about any of this. This would have been so out there and woo-woo. Did you find that there was ever a dip in people's understanding and acceptance of this? Not in your experience.
No, because the people who were attracted to this were, one of my hugest markets were the people who were already meditators. So they already believed in the unseen. They already believed that the most important thing you can do to be successful is to align yourself with the energy of success, the energy of positivity, the energy of all possibilities. So we already had that knowledge from our teacher Maharishi. So the meditators just all over the world just ate this up because it was a practical, it was kind of a structure to put that unboundedness into some boundaries and to use it to create material success for yourself.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense when you say it like that. But if you said that in the middle of North Dakota, people would get the white straitjacket. Although I could be completely wrong about that, because it feels like we're moving in a direction, especially right now, where people are looking for something else.
Oh, yeah.
They're more open to possibilities, I think, than we've ever been. And we still find, at least I do, still find people kicking and screaming into the world of transformation. They wouldn't call it that, of course. They want to stay the same. Please, not in my backyard, nothing new. Let's keep it the way it's always been.
Well, I'll tell you something. There's a body of knowledge called access consciousness, which is yet another wonderful body of knowledge. And one of the things that they say is that there are 2 types of people on the planet. There are cow people and there are horse people. And cow people are very content just grazing around in the grass and chewing their cud. And then there are horse people who want to just romp and play and escape to the next field and meet new horses and run like crazy. And you are from, was it North Dakota or South Dakota? North Dakota.
Yep.
And you're a horse person. You wanted to romp and play. So if you vibrate with that energy of wanting to romp and play and discover new horizons, then you vibrate that and you attract it into your life. But the people who don't want to change and just want to sit around and watch TV, which is the equivalent of chewing your cud, that's just their choice. It's not that they're bad people or wrong people. They're just cow people and we're horse people.
That's a really good way to think about it. And is it possible for cow people to become horse people?
Yes, absolutely. But it just depends how deeply entrenched and committed they are. It's just like, I was watching this before the election. I was watching somebody, an interview, and he was for the candidate who's currently president. And he said to, the interviewer said, well, has your life gotten better over the last 4 years? And he said, well, No, actually, it's been kind of the opposite. And he said, well, then why? And he said, because Joe Biden is evil.
Yeah.
And it was like, God bless him. God bless his heart. And I hope he has a wonderful life. But it just depends on how firmly entrenched you are. And there, but for the grace of God. No, I mean, I grew up in a liberal family in the suburbs of Chicago. Okay. I mean, my parents they were the ones who would go to protests when I was a little girl, and they were very vocal about civil rights when I was a little girl. So how am I going to grow up? Right. But if I grew up in some small town in Mississippi or whatever, I would have completely different views. And again, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just, we tend to believe and it's very, but I don't want to affirm that people will not change their minds. Okay. I don't want to affirm that. I think that I'd rather affirm that now people are gravitating to the truth more than ever. That's a great affirmation. People are gravitating to the truth now more than ever.
So when you say truth like that, is it truth with a capital T?
Yes, exactly. Thank you for making that distinction, because in the relative world, the truth is your truth. I always love the beach ball analogy. It's like if somebody is holding a beach ball and you're on one side of it, you say, this beach ball is yellow and white, and you're right. And the person on the other side says, no, it's not. It's blue and orange. And you can argue until the cows come home, but you're both right. So that's the truth in relative creation. It just depends the angle that you're looking at it. But when I say truth, I think that there are certain truths. And I think certain truths are kindness, caring, loving, not wanting to hurt anybody, that everybody is equal, that everybody is the most important person in the world, that everybody deserves equal opportunity, that everybody deserves the right to soar, that all of those things to me, I can't imagine how anybody could dispute that one human being is more worthy than another, or one human being doesn't deserve to be treated with respect as much as any other human being. As a matter of fact, I think that's one of the keys to success. My company is called Yes to Success. And one of the basic tenets is that if you want to be successful, treat everybody as the most important person in the world. Usually what we do is we tend to judge. We meet somebody and we judge by the way they're dressed, their hairstyle, their glasses, their height, their weight, the color of their skin, and we make a decision about how worthy that person is or how much of our respect that they deserve. But the truth is, the person standing in front of you at any given moment is the most important person in the world, and you have no idea who that person is. One of my favorite stories is my kid's babysitter. When she was a riot. She'd rollerblade over to our house. One day she'd have jet black hair. A few days later, she'd show up with white blonde hair. I mean, she was something else. And but I just treated her as the most important person in the world. And she now is the owner of one of the largest event planning companies in the country. They do like the presidential breakfast. I mean, their clients are like Audi and Geico and APEC. They put on all of the what is it? The Arabs and the Israelis when they get together for that. I mean, they do huge. They have huge clients. And, who do you think she calls when she needs a speaker?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have no idea. And one of my other stories is that when I was teaching Yes to Success, this cute little college student came bouncing up to me after one of my seminars and said, I want to work for you. And I said, I thought you said you were a graduate student. She said, I am. I'm going to quit graduate school. I want to be your secretary.
Wow.
And I said, maybe you should check with your parents. Anyway, she said, no, I want to work with you. And she left graduate school, MBA at UCLA, and she became my secretary assistant. And that little girl, cute as can be, is Marcy Scheimoff. And Marcy, who is one of the at least one or two top female nonfiction authors of all time. She sold at least 16, 17 million chicken soup books, not to mention Happy for No Reason, Love for No Reason. She's a sought after speaker. And when she was asked to write Chicken Soup for the American Idol Soul, which was going to be a lay down bestseller, she couldn't write it because she was under contract for Happy for No Reason. And they said, well, do you know somebody who loves American Idol, knows it backwards and forwards, and is a great writer? And she said, absolutely. And I was handed a best-selling book to write, not to mention that I got to interview all of the American Idols, which was a total blast, and be backstage and hang out with, Simon and Paula and Randy. It was in those days. And it was one of the most fun things that I ever did. And it was because I treated her like the most, I didn't think, who is this little girl bouncing up and down and saying she wants, I didn't look around the room to see if there is somebody more important to talk to. We've all been there. Right.
Oh my goodness. Well, I saw your picture with Adam Lambert. I knew it had to be somewhere that he's
Adam, he is so sweet. He was the best star. A lot of people have skewed ideas about who were the nice judges and who were the not nice judges, not to go off on a tangent, but I interviewed about 40 American Idols. And I would say that when I would say, so who is your favorite judge? The great majority, it was Simon. And they would tell me stories about how when they got voted off, that Paula, bless her heart, would go off to her dressing room to get fixed up for her next interview. And Simon would come up on the stage and give him a big hug and say, don't give up. You have a great future. This isn't the only path to fame, and tell stories about how there's this one guy, and I can't remember his name right now, but he was in season 2 or 3. He was like a crooner, and he loved like Frank Sinatra. And he was telling Simon about his grandfather who loved all of those. I don't know what they're called. Crooners is only a word I can think of. But he said that months later, he told me the story that months later, when he was in the top 10, his grandfather came to one of the tapings, and Simon looked over and realized who it was and went right over to him and said, your grandson told me all about you and your record collection, and remembered every single thing that he had told him. So I know that's a little American Idol trivia, but again, you never know who the person is standing in front of you. And I didn't say, I'm going to hire her because someday she's going to hand me a best-selling book to write, the #1 TV show of all times and the #1 book series of all times combined into one. I treated her like the most important person in the world, because the person standing in front of you is at any given moment, whether they're taking your order at the Burger King or they're ahead of state.
That might be the most important advice that anybody could hear. So anybody listening to this, please hear that. There's nothing more important. No matter what you do, it's who you be while you do it.
Could I share another story? Please. I don't know how our time is.
Oh, we've got all the time in the world.
All the time in the world, which we do. So I think that you heard the story before, but it has to do with my son, and it's kind of the same concept, but it's such a profound example of what happens when you do this. And my son, from the time he was like a little guy, he loved basketball. That was it's so funny looking at his baby pictures from the time he's like 2 or 3 or 4, 5, every t-shirt he has is some basketball jersey or some basketball player. So cute. But anyway, when he was a freshman in high school, he got on the A team, but he was like one of the only white kids on the team. And this white boy could not jump. And he spent most of the season warming the bench, but he had to travel around to all of the different schools with the varsity, junior varsity, and freshman, because there was only one bus. And he realized that he had an eye for talent. And he started a website when he was 14 or 15. It was called Illinois High School Basketball.com. And he would do a scouting report about the basketball players in the Chicago area. And he soon became known as the go-to scout for college coaches to find high school talent. And it was so cute because, you know, some assistant coach from Harvard would show up at a game based on Daniel's recommendation, and they would walk in, and there'd be this kid with braces whose mother had to drive him to the game, and they'd say to him, well, I'm looking for Daniel Poneman, and he'd say, well, I am Daniel Poneman, and they would nearly faint because that was not what they were expecting. Anyway, so as the years went on, he became very well known throughout the country. There were articles about him in Wall Street Journal and Chicago Tribune, a full page article about him in Sports Illustrated. He was featured on ABC and NBC and CNN and Comcast Sports. And he started these showcases because he was making videos and sending them out to coaches, but he thought that was too slow of a way to help these kids get scholarships, because that was all he was doing it for. He wanted to help these kids, mostly in the inner city, to get scholarships. And one day he thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start showcases so that a bunch of kids could be seen by a bunch of coaches all at once. And he soon found out that the kids couldn't afford the fee. So he started a nonprofit where he would collect money mostly from my friends. And then he would put on these free showcases, and he started generating millions of dollars in scholarships for the kids in the inner city. His first showcase was like, I don't know, maybe 30 kids and 10 coaches. And his most recent one, which was last year, unfortunately, we couldn't do one this year because of COVID, there were 350 kids and 140 coaches. And to date, he's generated over $50 million in college scholarships for the kids in Chicago. And the reason I tell you the story is because as he was generating all of these millions, I would say to him, Daniel, you have this nonprofit. Don't you think you can take some money for yourself? And he would say, Mom, just be patient. I'm building relationship capital. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, a few months later, I'd say, but Daniel, don't you think? He would say, Mom, really? Of course, he would say, you got to chill.
He is his mother's son, after all, right?
Right. He says, I'm building relationship capital. And I was so proud of him what he was doing. It wasn't like I was like, Daniel, you got to make money. That's the only thing to do. But he was working so hard that I thought it would be nice if he did and then he did. He started taking a small salary. But in the meantime, fast forward, and all of the people that he had built relationship capital with, he decided he wanted to make a movie about basketball in Chicago, and somebody gave him, who he had built relationship capital with, gave him $400,000 to make a movie, which ended up being nominated for an Emmy. Mm-hmm. And then he decided that he wanted to have his own sports management firm, and somebody else gave him millions to start a sports management firm. And of course, these kids who he helped get scholarships for are now in the NBA. So who do you think gets courtside seats? And, you know, there's just so much richness in his life now because he did it, not because, you know, I'm building relationship capital. I'm only doing this because later on I'm going to be rewarded. No, he did it because he loved the kids and he wanted to help the kids. But he knew at the same time that he was building relationship capital. So as you said, Jody, if there's no other concept that people leave this interview with, it's relationship capital. It's the most valuable capital, because all the money in the world is not going to buy you respect. It's not going to buy you self-love. It's not going to buy people looking at you and thinking that's a person with a lot of integrity. Mm-hmm. That's the capital that you want, because you and I both know that there are a lot of people out there who make a lot of money and they have beautiful cars and beautiful houses, and they hate themselves. They look in the mirror and they can't even look at that person that they're seeing. But if you can look in that mirror and really love that person that's looking back at you, that's the greatest gift. And that's only going to come from self-respect. And that's only going to come from giving and being an honest person and not needing to take credit when it's not due, but to give other people credit. All of those things that uplift you in your own estimation. That's the most important.
I want to talk about that self-love piece, but before we go on, I just want everybody to know that the movie that you're talking about is called A Shot in the Dark. and it's on Fox. You can see it on Fox right now if you want
Yeah,
to.
Fox Searchlight. It's a Fox Searchlight.
Yeah,
No, Fox something, but it's not a shot in the dark. It's
hot
shot
shot.
in the dark.
Yeah, and it's
Thank-
really good. If you haven't seen it, go look for it. You can. I got it through my cable provider, so I just got to see it without even paying for it. It was really good. So take a look at that movie.
I remember it's Fox Magnify. It was
Yeah.
a series that they did on sports. No, there's one on football, and they're all good, but Daniels is the one that got nominated for the Emmy. So.
It was really a great story about Chicago and what it must be like to be a Black young man in that community. It is really, I mean, especially now when we're talking about what's happened over the summer where we are in 2020, boy, it just gives you a whole other perspective. You know, going back to your beach ball conversation about how you don't know what the other side of the beach ball looks like if you're only looking at your side. And once you realize there's another side to things, that can open up everything if you're willing to do that. If you're willing to be a horse.
And it's so interesting because that movie, it showed they followed this high school basketball team for 4 years, and it really shows people what it's like to grow up in that kind of a neighborhood and how basketball is the only way out for some of these kids, and not all of them make it out, but even the ones who did make it out and they went to college, there's still not much support when they come back. So it's just it's really a vicious cycle, and we really all have to pitch in and change it. And hopefully we'll have there'll be some changes, and there will be more attention put on those types of programs that could help these kids, because they're good kids, they're great kids. But I'll tell you, if you look closely at the credits, there is one credit that goes by really kind of quickly, and it says that this movie is dedicated to the people in the kids in the Chicago basketball community who lost their lives during the making of this film. And there's about 30 kids.
My goodness.
And my son knew almost all of them. I knew a lot of them too. And it's got to change.
Yeah.
It's got to change. And movies like my son's, that they do bring awareness, but we have a lot more work to do.
And I guess we can go back and talk about self-love, and we can talk about transformation and how that will be the way. You've been doing that work for 40 years. And if we believe that, and we believe in the capital T truth, you see it all the time. You must see the results. We still see what's wrong. We see that it's never enough. It depends on how we're looking. You know, are we looking for what's wrong, or are we looking for what's possible? And I think once we can shift to looking for what's possible, we see things differently. We see the other side of that beach ball. Yeah. And so help me understand more about self-love and how your work might shed some light on that for us.
Well, my feeling is that people who know you, people who would listen to your podcast, probably are familiar with the law of attraction, that if you're negative all the time, you're going to attract negativity. It's a law of the universe. You can't deny it. If you're always talking badly about other people, you are bringing whatever they did that was bad, you're just bringing it into your own life and your own situation. We know that we should have gratitude. I mean, when I teach Yes to Success, we have gratitude week, and we have weeks, like one is gratitude week, one is no negativity week, one is moving outside your comfort zone week. So, and then we have a Facebook community. We all talk about what's going on during the week, and a very supportive community. But I think I don't have self-love week, but I have integrity week, because to me, the way to have self-love is to live in integrity. And it's not easy all the time to live in integrity, because you don't even know what decision to make to be in integrity. I'll give you an example. Somebody asked about a speaker for a live event, and they said, you know this person, what do you think about them? And it was so hard for me because I knew that that person was an excellent speaker, but I have also seen her be abusive to the people who are setting up her flip chart. I've seen her be a diva and demanding that I set a bottle of water, not a glass of water. So what do you do in those situations? I think that we've all come to the point that we have to now refine what it means to be in integrity. And I think what I've come to the conclusion is to just tell the truth, say, fabulous speaker. I have seen her get standing ovations. Her knowledge is incredible. But I just want to say that because I don't want to recommend somebody. And later they say, how could you have recommended her to me when she was horrible to my staff? And I'll say, but I just want you to know there is a little bit of a problem. And just so you know up front. But then I also realized that if I really want to be in integrity, I got to go talk to her.
So let's define integrity. How do you define it?
Well, I think integrity is to be true to your inner voice. Okay, that's what it is. Like, people will say, oh, Debra, you have so much integrity. You left your business. You know that I left my business when I was at the top of my game. I was about to have my own daytime TV talk show. And my book was in the hands of a New York publisher. This is in 1988. And I left because I had my baby girl. And I decided that to be in integrity, I didn't want to leave her to go to the bathroom, let alone leave her to go on a book tour, right? So I just gave it all up and I stayed home with my kids for 20 years. And people's like, oh, that you lived your integrity. Not so much. It was like, really, I was so in love with that child. Maybe it looked like integrity, but it was a choice. And I knew that I could go back and get on TV later or write a book later, but I could never be with my babies later because my babies were going to grow up. So is it integrity? I don't know. Maybe it is. Okay. But I think that we have come to the point in our evolution that integrity is a moment to moment thing. Is it integrity to, butt in front of line at the movie theater? Is it integrity when they forget to take your ticket and you give it to somebody else and they get in for free? I don't know. It's what you feel is integrity. And when you do those things, if you could look in the mirror and love the person you see, then you got it going on. I mean, I was my Marcy Scheimoff. Later on, we started this business together. It was called Your Year of Miracles. And I taught this fabulous course with her for 5 years. And then I woke up and I didn't want to do it anymore. I loved it. I still love it. I think it's an incredible course. And I love Marcy with all my heart. But one day I wanted to go back and teach Yes to Success. I wanted to go back to my roots. I wanted to go back where it all started. I wanted to go back and teach the course that Marcy took, that Janet Atwood took, that Deepak Chopra took. That Steve Farber took. I want to go back and give that to people. And I knew that I was giving up a really lucrative gig. And I had no idea if I started up Yes to Success again, if it was going to be big or not. I don't know. I was essentially starting from scratch. But I had to live my integrity. And Marcy, she was so cute. She goes, Deb, come on, don't do it. I said, Mars. And she said, because I had created quite an extravagant lifestyle. And I said, Mars, if I have to live under a viaduct in a paper box, cardboard box, it's more important to me to live in my integrity. And I think that when you do make those kinds of decisions, you're rewarded anyway. Because you, as Janet Atwood says, you're not the general manager of the universe. There is a energy, you can call it God, you can call it the creator, you could call it spirit, you could call it source, that rewards you when you listen to your higher self talking. And when you listen to your higher self, that's when you're living in integrity.
Wow.
And that's it. It's like, you know, when you're talking to a friend and they're being totally irrational and you know that their behavior is hurting them, do you tell them or do you not tell them? Right? It's hard to be in integrity at every moment, right? Because maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're only seeing the yellow and white in the beach ball. But you know, so I teach a lot of these principles in my Yes to Success course about how to live in integrity and about how to make those decisions at the moment. But the bottom line is, if you do screw up and you do say something to somebody and it was totally not seeing the blue and red side of the beach ball, then what's being in integrity is putting your hand on your heart and saying, I forgive you. You did the best you could. And we're not perfect. We're humans, and humans make mistakes, and then go back and make it right with that person.
That's such an interesting thing to talk about even now in our political arena, where people are attracted to energy without realizing it, I think. And what energy are we being attracted to? I don't claim to be an expert in any kind of energetic awareness, but it seems to me that when a leader in title has an energy to him or her, the people who are in that like energy it's like a magnet. Like you said earlier, it's a universal principle.
And that's why you want to be careful what you watch on the TV, because you're inviting that energy into your home. You're inviting that energy into your children's lives. And if the energy is out of integrity, if the energy is, you know, if the person tells falsehoods, if the person, I mean, what are the kinds of values that you want your children to have? Is it okay to lie? Is it okay to, you know, make fun of handicapped people? Is it okay to do those kinds of things? If you think that's okay, and it's okay to teach your children that, then bring that energy into your home, because because energy and actions so much louder than words. You're like, well, no, you should never make fun of somebody who has a difference, but yet you're supporting a world leader who does that. You know, our kids are so smart. It's like that, what's that expression? Your actions speak so loud, I cannot hear what you're saying. So if you don't do what is integrity for yourself, do it because your kids are going to grow up imitating you. Mm-hmm. And they're going to see what you believe, and they're going to think that's right. And that's what they're going to do in their lives.
Yeah. So, this becomes more than just what I want for me then, doesn't it? And if you don't have kids, or you're not, your kids are grown, there are people around you. There are people in your community. There are people in your workplaces, in your extended family, who you have an opportunity, I would maybe say a responsibility, to be, as Gandhi said, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. It has to start with me. I mean, it can't even start with anybody else. It has to start with me.
Yes, yes, exactly. Be the change that you wish to see in the world. And, you know, and another quote that I love from Gandhi, it's like, if you can't see God in the next person you meet, you need look no further. And it's very interesting, because what I'm saying is, don't bring that energy into your space, but at the same time, just pray for them, pray for their heart to be open, pray for them to just melt into a puddle of goodness, pray for them to do the right thing, you know, just send them that love, send them those prayers, because then what happens is that they might not change, but you'll change, and you'll see, you know, the hurt little boy inside, or you'll see, you'll have, what's the word? It's not pity, but
Compassion.
Compassion. Thank you. That's the word. There's this book that just came out by a woman named Edith Eger, Egar, Edith Eva Eger. And she wrote a book called, I think it's called The Gift. And she is a woman who is in a concentration camp. And it's an incredible book because what and one of the stories she told, I nearly fell off my chair when I was reading it. So here is this woman who she gets to the concentration camp and she's with her mother and her sister. They had already lost their father somewhere along the line. He got put in a different cattle car. And when they got to Auschwitz, the guard said, "Is this your mother? Is it your sister?" Because the mother was so young and beautiful. She said, "Oh, well, that's my mom." Took the mom away because all the young girls were going in one direction, took the mom away. And an hour later, she said, "Where's my mom?" to one of the guards who pointed up to the smoke coming out of one of the chimneys of the buildings. And anyway, then she talks about what it's like in Auschwitz, but she says, even in Auschwitz, you can choose. Even in Auschwitz, she said she would have pity on the guards because they didn't choose to end up being haters like that. They were groomed to be haters. Every child is born innocent. And she said, how could she hate them? She could only have compassion for them. And then when she got out of the camp, she became a prominent psychologist, and she's written several best-selling books. And the last one that she wrote, this one called The Gift, she was 91 when she wrote it. And she tells a story in it that a lot of these court cases they send to her, like teenagers, and a teenager was sent to her, and he comes into her office and he puts his elbows down on the table, and she says, "So what can I help you with?" And he said, "You could help me make America white again." He didn't know that she was Jewish. She actually has blonde hair and blue eyes. She didn't look that Jewish. And she said to him, "Well, tell me more about that." He says, "Well, we have to start by killing all the Jews, getting rid of all the Jews." And she said, again, all she could do is have compassion. This is what she said in the book: "Have compassion there, but for the grace of God, go I." And the other thing is, she said, "I couldn't think of him. I don't think of people as you horrible bigot. I say, okay, where am I being a bigot?"
Wow. Wow.
And that's how she's able to have these clients and not judge them. Where am I being a bigot? And she said she always has to look inside herself. So, when we hate the people who for being haters, then we're being haters. So we have to use all of our tools. Again, it seems like a dichotomy. Don't bring the energy in. You don't want to invite it into your house when there's lies and falsehoods and vitriol and, great people on both sides, when people are walking with tiki torches and spewing anti-Semitic bile. You don't say that there are great people and nice people on both sides, but you also pray for them and ask yourself, where am I doing the same thing, and work on yourself? Because when we work on ourselves, that's how we change the world.
I think about that as the distinction for me between judging and observing.
That's beautiful.
I bring it into myself, I end up judging it. And if I can just observe it, then I can keep it from, impacting me in that kind of way. I wear this necklace every single day of my life. It says, "Be curious," because then it keeps me from being furious. So if I have curiosity instead of getting angry and judgmental, it's just my reminder. I don't do it as much anymore, but I still wear it because it's still my reminder.
That is so beautiful. Be curious so you don't get furious. And it is true. Judgment, man. But I have high hopes for our country. I know this is going to be played after the election, but I have high hopes that there's going to be healing, and there's going to be a lot of hearts opening and people coming together, and the country's going to be, as it's unrecognizable right now in a lot of ways, it's going to be unrecognizable in the other direction very, very soon.
I agree. And no matter what happens, it's so odd to be having this conversation a week before we'll know, no matter what happens, I think for me in the last 4 years, I've been much more aware than I ever had been before. I took a lot of things for granted. I just assumed everything would work out and be fine. And the last 4 years, I've been very aware, which means that I've been more compassionate. As I've grown in awareness, I've grown in compassion myself personally. I am working to do what you've just said about I can love people from a distance. I don't have to love them close up. However, once I get to know them close up, it is harder to hate them because then you get to see them and you get to know them. Things like your son's documentary I guess it was kind of a documentary, wasn't it? Because it was.
Yeah, it was a documentary.
Yeah, it wasn't a fiction for sure. I'm watching more things like that. I'm more aware of things. I'm wanting to understand things better, even if I can't in my head understand things. I'm doing my best to get there. And that, I think, if people are doing that in these last 4 years, no matter what the outcome a week from today, to your point, we will become a more aware and a more compassionate nation if it starts with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I had a moment, because my big thing right now is, remember I said we have weeks, we have no negativity week, and we have moving outside our comfort zone week, and we have integrity week, and I'm having my integrity year. So I'm noticing every moment when I'm being in integrity. And my son pointed this out to me. You're going to love this because you have this show. You're a very honest person. I mean, I just love who you are. I love your energy. There's a quality, just an effortless kindness. And it's almost like an innocence. You're like such a good, I know you're very accomplished. So, but also there's this beautiful innocence about you. And that's just so compelling. And I was writing this article, and I was writing an article, and it was about my son's story, and about how he loved basketball from the time he was a little boy. It's for an anthology that it's going to be featured in. And I had this paragraph in it that said, and when he was 8, he looked for the best basketball team in the Chicago area because he was already a committed basketball player, and he joined a league called FAM, which stood for the Federation of African American Men. And that he was 8. Yeah, he found it. And he insisted on being in this league because he felt it was the best players. So my son read the transcript of the galley of the book, and he said, "Mom, you know what you're doing here with this paragraph?" I said, "What?" He says, "You're virtue signaling." And I said, "Virtue signaling?" And that's a term that means you're just showing how virtuous you are, that your son was in a basketball league with all Black kids. And I said, "You know what? I was virtue signaling."
Wow.
I was showing, wow, look how liberal we were. My son was and it was totally virtue signaling. Wow. That was out of integrity.
Wow.
Yeah, right. So when you be careful for what you ask for, because I have asked the God of my understanding to show me when I'm out of integrity. Boom, Wow. And just now I was about to tell a story that was similar to that, and the little voice went off in my head that said, virtue signaling.
Wow. So do you think that, okay, wait, now I want to talk about that for a second. So I'm a student of A Course in Miracles. And so I understand that if there are two ways of looking at the world, through the eyes of love or through the eyes of fear, everything that would be around my ego would be in the eyes of fear, and everything that's spirit is in love. And so does that have anything to do with ego, virtue seeking, virtue signaling?
Wait, does God have anything?
Not God.
Does what? Does
ego?
Oh, ego.
That's a little different.
Oh yeah, totally. It's like, oh, look how liberal Debra is. That's totally, it's BS. Yeah. And I notice how much I'm a BSer, that I want people to think, oh, what a great mother she was. Oh, what a great this. And I was a great mother.
Right.
Admit it. Right. I was a great mother. I am a great mother. I screw up.
Well,
all the time,
Oh,
but I think that I was a really great mother. But also, just catching yourself, those little things, like ego is totally, that's the reason we virtue signal.
yes,
So
yes.
that we get the pat on the back. Look how liberal she was.
Well, and
Ooh,
I think,
ouch.
but if we don't know better, how can we possibly do better? I
Not your thing. And
no.
then your year should not be impeccable integrity year, whatever it is. Maybe it's outside your comfort zone year. Maybe it's speaking your truth year. Maybe it's self-care year. I always name my year.
Nice. Love it. So is this integrity for next year, 2021?
Well, I actually name my year on the Jewish New Year,
Which
which
year? When is that?
it's the Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, so it is either in September or October.
Okay.
So this year it was like really early in October, or was it late September? But it was the Jewish New Year.
So it's the one coming up, the year coming up.
So
Okay.
yeah, so this October to next Jewish New Year
Okay.
is impeccable integrity year.
Love it. Oh, well, there you go. Then you've already started. I love it.
I know. I had already invited it in.
Oh, that's awesome. I start on the new year, like December 31st, and I'll come up with a word for the year. And my word for 2020 was focus.
Good.
Well, and look what happened in 2020 in March, right? I had to focus because I was doing 800 things, trying to keep everything in the air.
Jody, I'm sorry, but the whole pandemic was
It's all my fault. Because I was focusing. Oh my gosh. But if we think about that, there's something, I mean, this had to happen. Don't you think this had to happen, that the whole world slowed down at the same time?
Yeah, something had to
Somehow,
give.
somehow. I
Yeah.
can't say how, but it feels like I could never have imagined this.
No, I don't think any of us could have, but it's all the one thing we know for sure is that everything is a blessing.
Yeah.
As Byron Katie says, how do we know it was supposed to happen the way it did? Because it did. Argue with reality and you will always lose.
Yep.
People say this shouldn't have happened. Well, how do you know it should have happened? Because it did. If you argue with reality, you will always lose.
Very, very good. Oh my gosh. Debra, we could talk forever, and we may need to do another. I've had one person on, I think you know him, John Murphy.
I love John Murphy.
He's been my only 3-time guest. So he's the one who mentioned you the last time we talked. And I said, well, I know her. Oh my gosh, of course I need to talk to Debra. So I have some really cool friends, and I just need to keep having conversations with them so that I can keep my energy high. And, no matter where we live in the world, you're in California. Where in California are you?
Well, actually, I moved back to Chicago.
Oh, you're in Chicago now. Okay. So Chicago's a tough place to live. There's a lot of heavy energy in Chicago, depending on where in Chicago you are, because a lot of scariness happens there.
Well, and it's so funny that you say that, because I don't feel any of it, because I love Chicago and it's my home and I'm so used to it. I was living in Marin, and Marcy and her partner Sergio, they would always want me to go out and hike with them in the mountains and go out in some. I don't feel safe in the mountains and the trees. I mean, you can get lost or eaten by a bear. Me, I feel as safe as can be walking through the streets of Chicago, because it's my home. It's my laws of nature. It's where I grew up. And it's my son's girlfriend, Amelia. She's like a tiny little thing. She must weigh about 100 pounds, cute as can be. I mean, just this Swiss beauty. And she works in Inglewood, which is supposed to be the toughest neighborhood in Chicago, but she has no fear because, and nothing ever happens because she has no fear. And she loves the people that she's working with. She works with an organization called Growing Home, and it helps recently incarcerated individuals learn how to create urban gardens and sell their fruits and vegetables to local restaurants. And it's a fabulous nonprofit. And and it's one of the other things I teach is how can you combine what you love and make money from doing it. And like my son, who would think you could make money from loving basketball when you stop growing when you're 5'10",
right?
And yet he has this incredibly successful agency, which is Beyond. It's called Beyond Athlete Management, beyond.am. And here she combined her love of gardening, and she's a social worker. So she found this organization, Growing Home, and they have these beautiful greenhouses, and she works with these individuals to help them also interview skills and all kinds of things like that, so they could get jobs and selling their goods at farmers markets. Anyway, it's fantastic. And but back to, it's in the middle of Inglewood, but she has no fear, because this is where our laws of our laws of nature reside.
Well, everything's possible. And so it's a great reminder that you bring to you everything you need at whatever level of awareness you are. And I've found that too during COVID, when everybody's been bottled up. I've had an opportunity to connect with some amazing people just because I got gutsy and said, I'm going to ask. And so when I look at you and I look at me next to each other on the screen, we're the same. We're the same. I'm seeing me the way I've never seen me before, because I've only seen what I see. I don't see me seeing. And Zoom has it's given me so much compassion for me in a weird kind of way, because I used to not love myself as much as I could, because I only notice the things I don't want and don't like and don't appreciate. And Zoom has been amazing for me in that way.
Well, the old look in the mirror and say, I love you 10 times. When I first started doing that years ago, I could hardly look at the person that was saying, I love you. I felt, not that I couldn't look at them. That's cancel that. They just felt so distant. I didn't even know who they were. Like, I love you, but who are you? And then as I did the I love you exercise, I started connecting with that person in the mirror who was me. And then eventually, after doing it for a while, I merged with that person in the mirror. And I think that that's kind of the effect that we have in Zoom. We look at ourselves.
That's true. I watch it later. I watch myself later. I do a Facebook Live every Monday, and I don't ever know what I'm going to say. And it's funny because today, right before we talked, about an hour before we talked, I talked about some of the things that you mentioned today, and it's no accident. I mean, it's just funny, and I have to go back and watch it just because I don't remember exactly what I said. But the topic was, what's good in the world? What's good about being an American? Because
beautiful.
I watched an interview. So there's a documentary out. This is all I'm going to keep recording this, but I'm not going to use this part. Oh, okay, wait, I'll come back to this because I want to ask you. So Debra, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or wanted to know more about you and how they could do some work with you, how would they find you? What's the best way?
My website, it's yes2success.com, and it's YESTO, not the number 2. Okay. YESTO, yes2success.com. And if you go there, I have a free ebook. I love my ebook. It's not one of those, let's write an ebook so we can, get people's names. No. This is a really good ebook, and there's some free videos, and there's so much free stuff. And I write a blog. So yes2success.com, but definitely get my ebook. It's the 5 Secrets to a Life of True Success. And remember, I told you I had my book was in the hands of a New York publisher, and then I decided to be a mom at home instead. Well, everybody kept saying, when are you going to write a book? When are you going to write a book? So I took the 5 main, I'd say the 5 juiciest techniques, tools, knowledge that I have about how to create a successful life, and I put it in that ebook, and it's free for everyone.
Nice. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so there you go. Debra, thank you so very much for being with me today. I really do want to do it again at some point.
I would love to. I love being with you. I love you the minute I met you. And we didn't even plan wearing red. We're both.
No, and look at us, red and
black. It's us. We're matching, and sisters separated at birth.
Yes.
And I look forward to, and thank you for doing this, and thank you for this show and your Facebook Live and everything that you're contributing to the planet. Just being you, you're such a beautiful, authentic light on the planet. So
thank you, Debra. Thank you. Okay, so that's so good. Thank you so much. But I need to tell you about this documentary. So
do tell me when. I'm going to turn this light off. That was in my eyes.
Oh, okay.
There you go. Unfit. Okay. Oh, wow. Look at that.
So good. And
Oh, I'm totally getting it. Hold on. Let me
on the
write it.
back, it says, through the words and analysis of leading mental health professionals, Unfit discusses DSM-5 disorders, their danger, and the doctor's own duty to warn. They introduce the syndrome known as malignant narcissism and explain how it is responsible for great inhumanity throughout history. They liken its symptoms to Trump's behavior. So in here, they talk about Mussolini and Hitler.
Hitler. Yeah.
I watched that whole thing, which was fascinating. And
but what did you say was fascinating?
This whole documentary was fascinating. I mean, science, truth, duty to warn. Doctors who are saying we have a duty to tell you about this. And so one of the organizations that created this is George Conway's, who's the Republican.
Not the Lincoln Project.
Yes, the Lincoln Project. So George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's husband, is in there.
How could they be married? That's like the biggest mystery to me.
Well, she left finally. So she left Trump. So we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, whatever.
Because their daughter asked to be emancipated. You know that.
Yeah, I did hear that. And they have 4 kids.
I was so good. I didn't like go off on Trump. I tried to be really.
You did great. You did great. And then the other one that I watched. So I have friends on both sides, obviously, and I live in North Dakota, which is very, 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 very red. And so I'm doing my best to, be in observation. And I have this friend who's acquaintance, who said, you got to watch this. It's called the Trump card. And he said, it's about Trump. So if you're telling about this other stuff, then watch this other one. So I didn't watch Trump card, but I watched a interview with, I can tell you the name of the guy. He's a political interviewer named Patrick Bet-David, and his organization is called Valuetainment. And he's a really good interviewer. And he interviewed the guy who created the documentary called The Trump Card. And he's done documentaries on politics every 2 years for the past 10 years or so. And his name is Dinesh D'Souza.
I know Dinesh D'Souza.
Yeah, but watch it open-mindedly. So here's
okay.
Because I watched it open-mindedly today, and I got that. Okay. The American Republican form of government relies on the moral character of the people. That's what it was formed with. And I looked it up. Hamilton and Ben Franklin.
Don't tell me D'Souza, but D'Souza is still supporting Trump?
I don't know, because I didn't see the documentary, but it would occur as if he did, but I don't know. So see, I'm coming in with no preconceived notions. So I'm watching it from
He's an Indian guy, right? Yeah, I remember him, and I couldn't believe it that he was such a strong,